Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Katie Batesman, the content director at SheCanCode. And today we are discussing the importance of mindset and reflection as you embark on your journey of professional growth. I've got the amazing Nicole Yip, Principal Engineer, Marketing and Channels Technology at the Lego Group, who is here to share her own perspective on success, emphasizing the importance of actively seeking diverse viewpoints. Nicole, we've got a lot to chat about today. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Can we kick off with a bit of background about yourself, please? You've got an incredibly interesting background for all of our listeners as well. Nicole was on a recent live webinar with us, and that is also on SheCanCode.io. So you want to check that one out. She had a really interesting discussion about empathy in tech. But for our listeners, for our podcast who haven't heard of you yet, Nicole, tell us all about yourself.
Sure. So a super quick intro to me and then a little bit of a longer discussion about where I've come from. So I'm a principal engineer at the Lego Group. I've been in engineering for around 8 years now, mostly in DevOps and infrastructure roles. At the Lego Group, I've been focusing on the engineering teams behind the e-commerce part of Lego.com. And I've been taking those teams through their DevOps journey as an infrastructure engineer and then as an engineering manager and now as a principal engineer. So how I got into technology was I've always really liked putting things together and building things, and that eventually led me to completing an engineering degree that specialized in mechatronics. And most people will know that as automation engineering because it's more globally called that. It's a combination of mechanical, electronic, and software engineering, and it focuses on the bringing together of those disciplines to create a system that actually does something that functions. I did that in New Zealand, and from there I moved to Australia to become an IT consultant. That was me focusing entirely on software engineering, but I landed roles in DevOps and infrastructure, the ones where you kind of need to know about several parts of a system and they all need to come together to do the thing or to know that the system was working or wasn't working. So there was a bit of a theme going on. And then after working with several project teams in Australia to get their environments and pipelines up and running in AWS, I then moved to the UK. And I've been with the Lego Group since then with a focus on e-commerce on Lego.com.
Amazing. Can I pick your brains a little bit about
Sure.
what it was like to study in New Zealand? Obviously, in the UK, we always hear that lots of ladies that take courses in anything to do with engineering, they're kind of on their own. There's not many ladies. What was that like in New Zealand? Did you find that it was quite equal, or was it just you?
It's kind of the split that you would expect from an engineering degree, unfortunately, where there wasn't that many females, but there was around 30% in my team, in my cohort, I guess I should say. We found that some disciplines over-indexed on female engineers. So biomedical science, for example, was closer to 50%. Chemical and materials engineering also was really, really high. And so we found that females tended to group to certain disciplines.
Yeah. It's always interesting to hear how different countries have that gender split. And as you said, yes, most disciplines in engineering are still dominated by men. But you yourself, you started off, you said that you wanted to build things and I'm assuming take things apart when you were younger as well. You were that type of child. Was it something at home that had inspired you, or was it a teacher at school, or were you just literally that child who tinkered with everything?
I think I've always liked to learn things, and so taking things apart was the easiest way to get insight into something that you didn't know before. It's like, how does a pen click and stay clicked or unclicked, but with the same motion? That kind of easy access into finding out something that you didn't know before. And I think I really enjoyed that because looking back over my life, I've picked up so many different hobbies because I like the act of learning something new. Not necessarily finishing something new. That's a different story.
Yes, that's a whole other podcast there. So we've got a lot to cover today, and I wanted to get started with, from your perspective, there is significance in actively seeking diverse viewpoints for professional growth and development. Can you elaborate on this idea of seeking the diverse perspectives of others?
Yeah, so this idea came around because I've been reflecting on my career, how I've gotten to where I am today. And because I did a stint in people management for 3 years, I did get to talk to people who were on different parts of their career journey. And professional growth is typically talked about as learning more about something, forming opinions about doing things our way or the industry best practice way. And I've been reflecting, and I've found that if you focus on seeking and collecting different perspectives and different ways of looking at a system, having that focus has really grown my career. I think that's what has brought me to where I am today in the amount of time that I've been in the industry. I can give you an example of what I mean by perspectives. So because I came to technology from an engineering background, I had a lot of learning to do in order to just be part of a software engineering team. I started off by observing the software engineering teams. I started as an iteration manager or a scrum manager, scrum master, as it's known in Agile. And then I really dived into figuring out how you implement log collection and monitoring for the project that I was working on. That really opened my eyes to other parts of the technology industry that you just don't learn about at university, or you don't learn about it in any other way other than being in a software engineering team. Because going in, I knew about code bases, I knew about writing code, I knew about testing and executing code. But when you start working on something like a logging system, I suddenly had to learn how to remote into a virtual machine. I suddenly could see what that looked like. I suddenly could see log files appearing in different parts of the system. And that was something that I could have maybe learned theoretically, but by seeing it, by logging in, by seeing the file appear when I executed the code, that really brought things together. And suddenly it made sense that implementing a system to look for and send those log files from multiple different machines that different pieces of the system were running on into one central place would make monitoring, would make reconciliation of the processes so much easier, and that itself could become its own system. And so that was just the start of me starting to see a system from a different perspective. It wasn't just seeing it from a back-end engineering perspective and through the code. It was now seeing the logging and the monitoring side of a system, the DevOps side, actually, deploying it. And yeah, that kind of just snowballed into starting to see more and more parts of the technology industry.
Yeah, because when you started there, you said, coming from an engineering background, you felt like you had lots to learn, but actually, it was a positive coming in from a different perspective and a different background. And which I think a lot of companies seem to think they grasp that idea of, yes, let's have lots of perspectives because that really helps. But they're not so great maybe at finding the different perspectives and finding that, especially, gender diversity and other forms of diversity in the workplace. You're absolutely right when it actually comes down to it in the everyday projects that you work on. To seeing things from different perspectives is so important. And you nailed it wonderfully in your example there. How does challenging the conventional wisdom of knowing stuff contribute to personal and professional growth? There is this idea of knowing, isn't there?
Yeah. I guess when you go into a new role or you're starting a new job, there's this inherent pressure of needing to learn what to do and how to do it as fast as possible. And there's always this idea that there's transferable skills that you can bring from your prior experience that will help you get up and running faster. And an example of that is if you just know how to do front end or back end engineering, you'll be fine in any other front end or back end engineering role. That's kind of the thinking that goes into that kind of mentality. And you can actually see it in interview processes, just like you were saying. A lot of interview processes start out saying, so have you worked with a front-end framework like React, Angular, or Vue? That kind of question usually comes up. And it's all coming from this concept of if you know stuff, and the more stuff you know, the more senior you are. But there's always a trade-off. You can learn very, very deeply about a select few areas of technology, or you can learn really, really broadly across a range of disciplines within technology. But the challenge is you can't really stay at the forefront of all of them. I've managed to go from entering the IT industry to being a principal engineer within 8 years. And part of the recognition I've received, I think, stems from my curiosity and the ability to synthesize and bring together many different ways of looking at a system and communicate those potential blind spots that other people might have, and things that they might need to consider, and pinpointing at the right times to highlight that to the right people. I think that has been my skill set that's been kind of recognized.
Yes.
And it comes from this growth mindset, from this curiosity to just learn broadly, and not be afraid that it has to be a deep level of knowledge to get to where I am.
Yeah, I think that puts a lot of people off as well, doesn't it? From applying for certain roles, ladies are well known for not applying for things if they don't tick all of the boxes, if they don't know how to do everything. Whereas men will apply and just think, well, I'll learn when I get in. And you're right, that knowing stuff, if you are asked something in an interview and you don't know, and you think actually I would have to learn to such a deep level to be able to actually feel confident in this role, that can really hinder some people. Kind of, I mean, you would turn down some jobs that you would have been really good at,
Yeah.
and all because of that knowing stuff.
And it's
Having to.
interesting that you bring up that statistic, because I found out about that. Someone mentioned that to me as I was looking for roles to move to the UK. And so when I came across the job ad for the Lego group, I had that in my mind of like, you don't have to tick all the boxes and you can still apply. And to be honest, that's the only reason I applied. I wouldn't have got this role if someone hadn't said that to me just at the right time, because I didn't tick all the boxes. I talked about it to the hiring manager a couple years afterwards, and they were like, yeah, we took a chance. um, but look where I am today. So
Exactly, and
it's very
just
true.
bridging those gaps, that if you have any, are you have all of the skills that are necessary. It's just learning as you go, and feeling like you're at a company as well that can encourage you to do that. I was speaking with a lady on here only yesterday, and she said she had a similar background. She said a good company 8 years ago took a chance on her. She said, I didn't have all the skills. I didn't even have a technical background. And she said, I can't believe now she works in cyber defense. And she said, I never would have thought I'd ended up in that. It was just finding a good company who just took a chance on her and bridged the gaps in the things that she didn't know all everything that she needed to know for that job. But there are some great companies out there who do that. Nicole, you have a term called unknown unknowns. Can we talk a little bit about what does that term mean? The unknown unknowns.
I would love to claim it as my term. I just use it all the time, but it actually comes from like something like 1955. It's
Oh,
from
okay.
it's from two American psychologists who created this analysis technique called the Johari window, or Johari window. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's a framework that helps you put into perspective and kind of makes it okay to acknowledge that there are things that you just don't know. There are things that are, so it's got 4 different axes, and they are known to yourself, unknown to yourself, and on the other side, they are known to others and unknown to others. And where unknown unknowns come from is that axis where it's not known to you and it's not known to others. And it will just blindside everyone, it will blindside the world. An example of that is the fact that 0 days exist. So a 0 day is a security term where someone has found out a super critical vulnerability in a piece of software that has been around for, can be years, can be months, it could be anything. But the fact that no one knows about it except for this one person who discovered the 0 day, that's what an unknown unknown is. And the risk of all of that happening is that, there's 0 days that can be taken advantage of by all sorts of entities around the world. But I guess where I'm trying to go with this is that the concept of unknown unknowns is acknowledging that there are things out there that you just don't know about, but other people know about and other people don't know about. And it's only through curiosity and talking and reading widely will you actually discover these unknown unknowns. And it's by being super curious, it's that you uncover different parts of what I'm bringing it back to is the technology industry or the industry that you work in, and that potential opportunity that the problems to solve over there might actually be super interesting and energizing to you. I When I did the mechatronics course, that didn't exist 4 or 5 years beforehand. I would never have heard about it at school. I would have never heard about DevOps when I was in university because that wasn't a term that existed at that time. So by being really curious, by acknowledging that there are things that you don't know that the industry doesn't know about just yet, it forces you to say there must be something else out there. Let's talk more. What else am I not aware of? And it's looking for those opportunities to grow into these spaces that you weren't aware of before.
Mm. Yes, it's so interesting because we get asked from our community so much about transitioning into tech and especially doing it later in life. And just thinking, you know what, actually, I don't know a load of things. I'm too late to the game. I haven't learned everything that has happened already. And actually, it's absolutely, you're absolutely right in putting yourself in that mindset of actually just being curious about what's to come. You don't know everything that's due to come, and that that's okay as well. And it's just, you know, catching up on the things that you need to know and being okay with the fact that you don't know all of the unknowns as well. Is yeah, it's a certain mindset, isn't it, coming into technology. I mean, the amount of people that come on these podcasts that talk about being in a certain frame of mind where you have to constantly be willing to learn as well, because as you said, things change so fast in the tech industry, and even the course that you took didn't exist a few years ago. So,
Exactly. And
but
there's
that's
this
one of
weird,
the fun things though, right?
there's also a weird duality that a lot of people don't talk about, where, for example, I was a senior infrastructure engineer, but at the same time, I was a junior front-end engineer. Like you can go really deeply into a certain discipline in technology, and you will, by definition, then also be junior in all of the other disciplines. And just because your title is senior doesn't mean there's opportunity and growth available in all of the other areas.
Yeah.
So while you could enter into the technology industry in one discipline, there is still so much more for you to learn and so much more opportunity out there. So there's often this thing where people project onto others. If I know this, so and so must know it because they're a senior. Not true, right? If I'm a senior infrastructure engineer and I'm talking to a React engineer and they talk to me as if I know React, it's like because I'm senior in everything technology,
Yeah.
um, it's not going to work, right? So just by talking with each other and acknowledging that there are things that you're going to know, there's things that you're not going to know, that opens up all of these opportunities to explore and find more areas that could be super interesting.
Yeah, especially with ladies when they step into senior positions. You're right. It's kind of, not only do people project onto others and they assume that other people know. I know a lot of female leaders feel like they think everybody should know. They think everybody thinks they know everything because they're in a senior leadership position, and it puts a lot of ladies off from taking that leap because I think everybody's going to want to know everything, and they have that imposter syndrome feeling like if I don't know everything, maybe I'm failing. And it's, yeah, it's an awful position to be in, because like you said, you have your experts in each field as well, and that just because you don't know everything doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't, and that's what your team is there for, to figure that out, and to stay curious obviously is important as well. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about early life experiences. What is the impact of early life experiences and social networks on shaping our perspectives?
So when you look back at early life experiences, if you think about kind of the norm of kind of schooling and education, which on the face of it focuses on teaching as much stuff and theoretical knowledge as possible, within however many years you're there. But actually, that theoretical knowledge is such a small part of what shapes you into who you are. And for the most part, the theory that you learn at that time gets thrown away and you start learning all over again a more focused set of skills and maybe a bit of theory in the role that you actually end up in. The person who you actually become and the types of things that you get exposed to is more influenced by the social networks that you grow up with, because they're the ones who you're talking to. They're the ones who are uncovering your unknown unknowns, or known, is it known unknowns or unknown knowns? One of them, where they're not known to you, but other people around you know them. And it's that mix of your family network, the friends, the wider societal environment that you grow up in, and the conversations that you have, what they decide to talk about. This is the power of words, right? What they decide to talk about is what you're suddenly going to be exposed to. Oh, they used a term that I'm not aware of. Let me go and search what that means. Whereas if there's people who are just not talking about a certain thing, maybe it's the color blue, let's take an example. You will never know that the color blue exists unless you're curious outside of the people that you're talking with. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love the fact that you brought up the way that we're schooled as well. you learn a lot of things in school and then you forget all about them anyway, and it's almost like you start learning again. I remember when they changed the curriculum several years ago, and I remember covering a lot of stories on it, because businesses has almost caught on that everything you get learned at school, if you want to go into technology, is just so disconnected to what it is actually like to work in technology. And I still think that is the case in lots of things, but I remember them changing the curriculum to have a computing curriculum instead of previously it was just spreadsheets and learning how to do a mal merge, and that was about it. And there's still work to be done there, but you are right. It's the way that you are schooled. You kind of forget all of that, and it is more important, as you said, as the social networks that you grow up around, which is something as well of, you know, if you don't have those social networks in your life that are talking to you about careers in tech or anything like that, and you're not familiar with what it will look like, then it can be quite hard to be inspired in that area. So, you know, if you don't see something on TV, for instance, it can be quite difficult to think, actually, I'd love to take up a career in technology, which is why a lot of the ladies that I talk to, they found that later in life as well, where they actually, I had a friend who done it, or a lot of ladies, they tell us that they have husbands that worked in the field, and they thought that's a really good area to go in, and then they relearn everything, which is always so interesting to hear how people fall into the tech sector. You were on our webinar for empathy in business, so I wanted to touch upon a little bit about that again today. How does the power of empathy tie in with personal and professional development?
So there's like one way to start understanding a new way of looking at a system is to actually work on it. So for example, I worked on implementing a log collection and monitoring system. I used jump boxes, I saw log files, I installed it. I did all the hands-on stuff. Another faster way to understand a new perspective is to learn from the experience and the perspective of others. So sure, you won't understand it as deeply, and you might not become the subject matter expert, but you can start to build it into your mental model the more you ask and the more you're curious about it. So imagine if you have no idea about security. Imagine that it's a complete black hole. You don't know what it is. Maybe you know the title, security. But now you're sat next to a security expert. They're a wealth of knowledge. They know everything about the whole discipline within technology. And you can capitalize on this opportunity. And it's by harnessing the power of empathy and all of those techniques around it, to be curious. And that is how you will extract information that goes from their mental model, their way of communicating about security, into your mental model, your way of seeing the world. And it's only by using empathy will that translation actually happen, because people can talk at you about security nonstop for ages. It's a super interesting topic. But if you don't have the techniques to try and ask the open questions and the clarification questions and the, you know, just continuing to be curious until it starts to make sense to you and it fits into your way of seeing the world, the mental models that you've built up around the industry, until you can internalize it, you're not really able to take on that new perspective. So yeah, all of the things around the power of empathy is how you can actually gain these different perspectives. You can start to collect these different perspectives without needing to invest the many years of becoming an expert and being hands-on in that thing. So I've managed to collect security, I've managed to collect accessibility, performance in a couple different disciplines just by being super curious and asking those clarification questions, being willing to put myself out there and say, I think this is what a good accessible page looks like. What am I missing? And, you know, just talking it through. I didn't build the page. I found it on the internet. But I was trying to make it fit in my mental model. What are the different ways that you can approach it from, and find those different views and perspectives? So,
yeah. I love everything you just said. I think as well with empathy, it's something that people don't put on their CVs. And I think they should, as one of those really important soft skills, because most people think coming into tech, you've got to be highly technical, and that's it. But actually, when you said about communicating and how you can take on what somebody else is saying, it's okay if somebody's just talking at you. But if you haven't got that skill to take it on yourself, then it's just not going to go in, and it's not going to work. And I think empathy is one of those lovely soft skills that not everybody has, and it's something that we should all highlight. If it's something that a skill that you think you have, and definitely put it on your CV. If you can give examples of where you've used it as well. So important. What about collaborative learning? We spoke a little bit there about empathy and communication, but what is the value of collaborative learning and shared experiences in fostering growth?
This kind of goes back to what we were talking about around the early life experiences, where now if you go into a team that is super collaborative, it means that they really value knowledge sharing and they value working together. And that gives you many, many opportunities to uncover your unknown knowns, things that are unknown to you, but known to others in the team. And this is where I was kind of talking about, I can be a senior infrastructure engineer, but a junior front-end engineer. And if the team doesn't talk a lot about the software engineering things that they're doing, I have no opportunity to go and Google that new word that they were talking about. Like, I can't Google hydration if I'm not part of this open knowledge sharing collaborative environment. Like the team can hopefully not assume that I know something like prop drilling because it's basic to them, and I'm a senior, so I need to know that thing. So being in a collaborative learning and shared experience environment, it helps uncover those unknown knowns and help the team grow together.
Yes, definitely. And again, another really useful soft skill, being able to collaborate as a team and being able to communicate. I think as well, collaborative learning as well is something that people who are not in the tech industry, they don't always realize that you're going to be doing that and you're going to be working as teams. It's a really big misconception that you kind of work siloed when you come into tech. And that you're some kind of weird personality that just loves to sit on your own and work on your own. And actually, everybody that works in tech always says, actually, I have to collaborate with lots of teams. I get to learn from lots of teams. And that's sometimes something that a lot of those people just didn't know was going to be a thing when coming into technology, and has almost taken some people by surprise. I don't know why more people don't know that. That you get to learn from each other. What about advice? What advice would you offer to individuals who are seeking both personal and professional development?
So I guess I brought this concept to the podcast around, collecting different perspectives and all of that. But I think that has to go hand in hand with a couple different phases. So I talk about unknown unknowns because you first need to discover what's out there, discover the opportunities that you could grow into, and then cherry pick the ones that energize you and start learning and exploring and making that unknown more of a known to you.
Yeah.
Then you need to understand. That's where the empathy comes in. That's where synthesizing it into your own mental model so that you can speak it in your own words is the next phase. And then actually implementing it, starting to tell others about this thing. I can now advise people about security stuff, even though I've never, ever been a security engineer. And so I think it's those 4 different phases, and taking opportunities through that is what's going to help you grow as an individual. And it's what you choose to, what unknown you cherry pick to is where you're going to end up growing. So I didn't know about security, so I decided to cherry pick that one, learn it, understand it from a couple different people, and then start using that, what I'd gleaned from all of them. You could do it on a personal level as well. I decided to learn crocheting, and then I learned it. I now understand it, and I'm now running workshops at my company because I now run the craft club because
Amazing.
I really like crafting. So
yeah, I'm sure loads of people want to learn that as well. It's something I think we all attempted in lockdown, but if you're running workshops, amazing. You know what? I think you are absolutely right as well on cherry picking things. I think it's so easy, isn't it, to get lost in the day to day where actually you forget about personal growth and you forget about trying something new and learning something new, which isn't only putting you at a disadvantage, but also your employer as well, because good companies, they really encourage people to grow and learn and develop. I suppose when you're in the right environment, you feel like you can do that. And sometimes when you're in the wrong company and you just feel like, you know what, I'm so bogged down in my day to day, I completely forgot about growth, personal growth and development growth, professional growth. So yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, just to forget.
Yeah,
Just your day
and
to day.
I've got a really funny story where there was a lead engineer in the team who came along to our craft club meetups, and his reflection was, everyone should have something that they're learning. Everyone should have something that they're completely noob at, and and it just humbles you. It takes you back to the point of, there is stuff I don't know, and this is how it feels, and they can start to create that empathy with more associate engineers, or that kind of thing where, oh, I can't see the stitches, but you just pointed it and said, this is correct, or this is wrong. And
Yeah.
that's how it feels when they're mentoring a more associate engineer in IT things. It's so obvious to them because they've done it for years that it's inherent. But for the associate engineer, everything looks the same. It's all blending together. So yeah, it was a really interesting reflection of, everyone should just go and learn a brand new thing and experience that, to reconnect with that experience.
And that just kind of ties in with the Lego group's ethos as well, doesn't it?
Learning new things and building and staying curious. So yeah, it's really interesting that you have craft clubs, all kind of fits together.
Yep.
Nicole, we're almost out of time, and I wanted to ask you one last question. Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything that you wish somebody had told you before you embarked on your journey?
Well, about halfway through my journey, I attended a conference thing, and there was a message that someone said there that stuck with me ever since then. And it was, start before you're ready. So the message was that no one is ever really ready, because there is always an unknown unknown hiding around the corner. No one can refine a ticket to an nth degree and guarantee that nothing else will crop up if you do it exactly as the ticket says. So getting in the mentality of starting before you're ready and starting to collect those new perspectives around you is something that I would advise. No one is ever ready for anything that they do. So don't wait to be ready, because it's not going to come. Just start.
I love that. Start before you're ready. I'm going to throw that at a few people. Pass that one off as my own. That is a brilliant piece of advice. I think, as we've said throughout this, a lot of people put things put things off. They feel like they can't go for that really good job or move forward and learn something new. And you're absolutely right. Starting before you're ready seems just the start of something. A starting point sometimes is the only point you need. But yeah, that is great advice, and it has obviously led you so far down your own professional career path. So Nicole, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day and for coming on to SheCanCode's podcast. It's been a pleasure.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and to everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.